hot day. And make a motion to nominate Sean Eversley Bradwell, sitting board member, to serve as a temporary chairperson until the president is elected.
Gotta be voted.
Voted on, yeah.
Board discussion.
All in favor?
Thank you for your faith temporarily. The next item of business is the appointment of the clerk. And these also have to be, there's going to be a number of things that have to be moved, second, and then voted on. And so we'll entertain motions to appoint a board clerk. And the language is posted in the agenda for us.
Tricia Ferris Ford be and hereby is designated the clerk of the Ithaca City School District, Ithaca, New York, for the 2023-2024 school year. Second.
Discussion, questions, debates. Hearing none, all in favor? Passes unanimously, and we will administer the oath. Tricia, feel free.
I, Tricia Ferris Ford, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the clerk of the Board of Education of Ithaca City School District according to the best of my ability.
Tax. You will sign the book and hold on file in the clerk's office. Great. Item agenda 2.1 is the administration of oath of office to the superintendent of schools. There is a motion on resolution on the agenda. So,
Keeping it going, I move that Dr. Lavelle Brown be and hereby is designated the superintendent of the Ithaca City School District, Ithaca, New York, for the 2023-2024 school year. Second.
by Mark, second by Tricia.
No.
Jill. That's why I got called here. Discussion, debate, dialogue. All in favor? Yes, unanimously. Dr. Brown, your oath.
Thank you. I, Dr. Lavelle Brown, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of superintendent of schools according to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Dr. Brown.
Hope I can still see this next year. If we get audience, yeah.
Well, I always say the best eye exam is a menu in the dark room. That will bring us to elected board members, agenda item 2.2. And this is not a all-resolution. This is simply taking the oath and then signing the book, which we have the book here. And we will sign all three of us will sign the book after taking the oath. So it's in alphabetical order. Katie, if you see the language right there, please take the oath.
I, Kate Walker, solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Board of Education member according to the best of my ability.
Fantastic. Welcome, Katie. Garrett, please.
Eric Black is I swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York. And I will faithfully discharge the duties of the Office of Board of Education member according to the best of my ability.
Welcome, Garrett. And unlike Dr. Brown, I'm cleaning glasses. I, Sean Eversley Bradwell, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the Office of Board of Education member according to the best of my ability. Fantastic. Welcome to our new board members. Thank you very much. Before we leave today, let's just make sure that we sign the book. So we have it on record. The next agenda item is the election of the board president. I want to make sure everyone understands the process that's going to happen for the election of officers. It's a two-step process for each office. The first step is nominations. Each nomination needs to be moved, second, and then voted on by the majority of the board
As a nomination.
as a nomination. It's new process we have not done. We've been checking with our legal counsel to make sure that we are doing things in the correct order. We will go through that process for as many nominations as there are. The second step will then be the election of one of those nominated persons. Anytime that the election part has a majority vote, then we stop there. A majority vote the 9, so 5 votes or more. Each board member has the opportunity to vote yay, nay, or abstain. And so it's going to be possibly complicated, but I want to make sure everyone understands where we're headed. Questions that folks may have before we engage in this process? I'm looking at you, Katie, because you're making it
Well, I have a quick question. So we know we have 2 nominees for vice president,
possible.
one more.
They haven't.
That may or may not happen.
That's right.
Is there any point in the process in which like candidates or nominees, I guess, say a couple words?
Anytime anything is moved and second, there is always an opportunity for discussion prior to any vote. No matter what the agenda item is, there's always the opportunity for one vote.
What happens in the event of a tie?
You want me to be, the honest answer is we're gonna be like the House of Representatives and go 26, 28 votes until we resolve the issue.
Okay.
I mean, we're following Robert's Rules of Order loosely, but we will follow Robert's Rules of Order.
Nine-member board.
Well, some other state that it's for.
Yeah.
And we keep going.
Okay.
Then we do the vote all week.
Just hypothetically.
Yeah.
I like the arm wrestling idea.
Extensions are valuable. Very valuable. Nominate.
Self-nominate?
Yes, self-nomination are possible. But any nomination again has to be second, and then there has to be a vote of the board to make that nomination onto the election process, if that makes sense. So it's somewhat redundant, but we want to make sure that we're covering our base. We're good? Everybody?
Nominate Dr. Sean Eversley Bradwell to the position of president of the Board of Education for the Ithaca City Schools.
Additional nominations.
Don't we?
Oh, you're correct.
This new thing that.
I'm just broke the entire protocol. Discussion, debate, dialogue.
Anybody want a piece of fruit to throw out?
A vote on the nomination. All in favor? That nomination is unanimous. Additional nominations for the office of president. It's a the officer. There's no office that comes. Okay, hearing none. We will move that process on to the election stage. And there is a resolution that is on page 4. 3 points, item agenda 3.2. And the resolution would simply add the name in.
I motion to elect Sean Eversley Bradwell as president.
Second.
Moved by Aaron, seconded by Moira. Discussion, dialogue, debate. Hearing none, all in favor. So. Fantastic.
Ellie, if you don't.
I will take, I'm gonna remember that, Joe, that's good. I, Sean Eversley Bradwell, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of President of the Board of Education according to the best of my ability. I will sign the book twice later on. Thank you all for your faith. I'm looking forward to the role and looking forward to building community. Very appreciated. We will next move to agenda item 4, which includes agenda item 4.1, which is the nomination of vice president of the board.
I nominate Moira Lang as vice president of the Board of Education of Ithaca City School District.
Second.
Moved by Eldridge, seconded by Joe. Discussion, debate, dialogue. Hearing
If
none,
the candidates were to want to speak, would it be now or after the election?
After vote.
Or after the,
Most
or after the
most of the,
nominations are done, I think. is appropriate.
seems like we're in relative agreement of that. Fantastic. There's no other questions. All in favor of the nomination? Unanimous. Additional nominations for vice president.
Board of Education.
Second.
Thank you.
Moved by Aaron. Seconded by Eldred. Discussion. Fantastic, hearing none, all in favor. The nomination is unanimous. Additional nominations for the role of vice president. Fantastic. So this brings us to the election part, and hearing that folks wanted to have some conversation, we did say that we would have discussion and some dialogue. I think part of my concern is if we went forward with one candidate and there was a majority, that would end the dialogue discussion. So I'm wondering if we should have a moment of discussion now prior to taking the first vote. Works. That relative that work for most folks.
By discussion, you mean like a brief statement or something like that?
Or questions?
Okay.
Floor is open.
I'll go first because I don't know. What should say, I would say that I'm running for vice president because I think it's a good idea to shake things up now and then. And I don't want Sean's job. But I thought, all right, there's a bunch of new people on the board and I think we could use some changes and continue to move forward. And I would like to be a part of that. And Moira has assured me in an email that she will have no hard feelings one way or another.
Oh, that's.
And I assure her in a way that I felt the same way. So we're both stepping out of our traditional female roles here to say what we want. Does anyone have any questions about why I think I'm qualified to do this or what exactly I'm moving?
I do have a question,
For it.
Jill. In your brief statement, you mentioned wanting to run to bring a clearer sense of transparency to the district.
Yes,
Can you speak about that and what
Sure.
exactly you were referring to and how you would go about creating such transparency?
you bet. As I have mentioned repeatedly, I think we overuse executive sessions sometimes. I understand the times when it's necessary and fully support those, but I think there are other times when we achieve consensus, often in executive session, if not always, and then bring it forward and present it to the public, and they don't see what we talk about. They don't understand our reasoning, and we end up looking secretive at best, and devious at worst. And so my hope would be to reduce executive session to purely when it is absolutely necessary for legal or personnel related ideas, and to develop, dare I say it, a culture of more discussion at the board level. And I understand that that may indeed mean meetings will run a bit longer. How much longer will be up to our own self-discipline, of course. But I really think we need to be talking more. And I haven't a lot for the past year, although some of you may feel like I have spoken plenty, because I've been trying to get a sense of how things go. But there have been times when I've kept my mouth shut and just watched because I was new. And I think it would be good for all of us and good for the public if we share our thoughts. We don't always have to disagree. We don't always have to agree. But we should let people know what we're thinking. I think that's the short, relatively short answer.
I'd like to make slight correction, not we should let people know what we're thinking. Hopefully, you should have let people know what you were thinking, because you can't generalize it.
Each of us should let people know.
Because I believe I let people know, and I'd like to know what you meant by shake it up also, because I thought executive session was used in the way it should be used, as there are several things that we cannot discuss in a public setting. As any board of directors, board of education should rightly know that there's some items that shouldn't be discussed public, but I could see even when we had some deliberation over like the PJ and playground or different things that it did come out in the public setting. But I know that during my first year on the board, that I vocalized what I needed to vocalize. I asked questions when I needed to ask and all in the board meeting as well as elsewhere. And I was very cautious sometimes in like certain groups. There was a group that came to me, like ITA came and asked to meet and to one-on-one. As a new board member, I reached out to Moira as a mentor to say, would you join me in the meeting? Because I wasn't sure exactly how to handle the meeting. And I was appreciative that Moira said, yes, she would join me, and just as a mentor and be there like a guide by the side. When I went back to that group and said, all right, Moira and I welcome to meet with you to have coffee. Ghost, up to now, I haven't heard a response. So I thank you, Moira, for your mentorship during that time. And then I just wanted to know from your perspective, Jill, what are you looking to shake up a little bit?
There are a couple of points in there, as I remember them, I'll try to address them. One, and I applaud your willingness to speak out, but not everyone does. And there are certainly times during this year when I did not. Just because I was interested in moving things along, or because we had sort of an easy flow of presenting a unified front. And I don't want that to change necessarily, but I would like everyone to feel an opportunity to present pros and cons on issues. And I think that shows thoughtfulness and responsiveness to the public. Your other point, one thing that you mentioned, I'm a little puzzled and perhaps feeling left. ITA never asked to meet with me. So that's an odd thing, but we'll let that go for now. As far as shaking things up, I think the people who've been running things have gotten pretty comfortable. And I think it might be a good idea to have some people in who aren't as set in how things have been going, as far as how the board runs, how its interaction with Dr. Brown runs. Yeah, I think that's what I'm thinking. And again, it's okay if you don't agree.
Right, yeah.
I still like.
Yeah. And I commend Dr. Brown for always reaching out to each and every one of us and saying if we need to talk to you at any given time to follow up, as well as Amanda has done that and Jill has done that. So I would encourage new board members that at any time whatsoever you have any questions, the administration is here to serve the community and the public. And we have to, as board members, we're taking that oath. And if we read that oath carefully and we read the Constitution carefully, we know what we're standing behind, that we have to represent the community.
I'll just add that for the new members, when we're in the executive session, there are legal standards we have to follow, set by the state, not us. The most contentious things. I have been part of more than 2,000 contentious conversations behind closed doors that could not be revealed to the public. They involve contractual issues, they involve personnel matters, some of which we then were able to come out and discuss with the public, right? At least our particular stance on the issue. But you all will realize very quickly in these roles, you are now a target. And all the love that preceded you to this point will quickly shift. And sometimes it hurts to understand that we can't discuss our personal feelings about very contentious issues, especially when they impact us directly, like the retirement issue was one that we've been dealing with for 6 years. And when we are in a gray area, Sean will reach out to our council and get clarity. So sometimes it is a fine line. But we do, after taking this oath, represent the interests of all of the taxpayers, and we have a responsibility for shifting or shaping our $150 million budget. And you'd be shocked at what you will find we are being sued for on this side of the table.
If there are no more questions for Jill,
I need to respond to that. I want to stress again, I am not opposed to executive session. I fully understand the necessity of executive session. I think at times, and I have been as guilty of this as anyone, that it has slid into things that didn't need to be an executive session. We have started because we feel comfortable with each other, because we were in private. And again, I've been as guilty as anyone when we've said, well, what about, and then we've kind of gone there, and I'm saying, we have to watch that. I have to watch it.
there's no more questions for Jill, and I want to keep this on nominations.
Right.
Right? We'll give it to Maura if that works, or pass it to Maura.
I'll be brief, I'll try to be brief, not my strong suit. On the subject of executive session, I'm appreciative of, us becoming aware and thinking about, I think it's something we can talk about in a development session when we have one, using specific examples. As to my nomination and my candidacy for vice president, I've been in this role for 1 year. And last year, I was strongly wanting and encouraging Sean to be president, because I think there's nobody who has both the knowledge and the skills to do this job nearly as well as he does. Certainly not me. And so when he was agreeing to be president, I said, I'm agreeing to be vice president to support you. And so over the 8 years that I've been on the board, I've learned so much from my colleagues. Sean very, very much has been a mentor to me in those 8 years. And so this past year, I have continued to learn so much from him. And I feel like we've developed a good working relationship. We've developed some approaches to things that are problematic. For instance, communications when we receive complaints mostly from members of the public. Still a lot of work to be done on that. It's difficult, and our thinking about it has evolved. So I very much want to continue to build on what the progress that we have made as a team. Any questions?
First, I want to thank you for acknowledging that communications to the outside public has not been a strong suit of our district, especially the last 5 or 6 years. Once we told Dr. Brown, you can no longer stay up 24 hours writing newsletters. Right, then we fell into a bit of a dip. We finally had some manna rain from heaven from the federal government, and Dr. Brown wisely used it to get a communications office now. And since then, I think everyone can see that the communication's been more consistent, more professional. Whether it's hit the mark entirely, it's still up for debate, but that's a work in progress.
Additional questions?
Yes, Maura, what do you see as additional strengths you need to add to either the partner with Sean, or to help the group, or to move the organization forward?
Well, I mean, I certainly have a very lengthy background in the district, both from working here, but also having, many family members out here. And many family members go through pre-K through 12th grade here, so that background. And I think, another strength of mine is I'm a learner. I value learning, and that's one of the reasons why I have enjoyed, for the most part, my time on the board. And why I've continued to run is because I feel like I have really grown from this experience, and it's really nice at age 70 to feel like I'm still learning and growing. And, you know, education has been the focus of my entire adult life. So this is an opportunity to continue to be engaged in education, but not full-time with papers to carry home and grade. And to, you know, be continuing to serve this community, which my, you know, grandson is now, you know, going into kindergarten in this school district.
Thank you.
Could I ask Jill to answer maybe that same question? Because you mentioned areas that you are interested in changing, maybe, but could you answer maybe the strengths you bring to the table?
First and foremost, 30+ years of experience in the district. I came here and I was the kid. And I left and I was no longer the kid. I've lived in Ithaca for 40 years now. My son went through the system. I worked at literally every school in the district. And I think that's a huge bank of experience. And yeah, it's a lot of the people that I worked with are gone, but many of them are still around. And I find that a lot of the schools feel very much the same when I visit them. I think the other thing I bring is kind of an occupational hazard, and that's that I actually am a listener. I listen to people, I try to synthesize what they're saying, I try to be open to hearing things. Which doesn't mean that I'm also the third thing, and maybe I don't know if it's the most important or not. The third thing is that I try to speak clearly about my own thoughts and my own conclusions, and I expect everyone else to do the same. So although I'm listening and incorporating, I will always tell people what I'm thinking. And I try to do that again, clearly and concisely. So I think that's what I've been known for in the past in various roles on various committees, both in the district and in the community. So I hope that answers.
Thank you.
And I don't have any grandchildren yet. But when I do, they'll be going.
They're expensive.
There's no rush.
And after spending 9 solid days with my grandson without his mother, I realized there's a reason why 70-year-old women don't have boys.
Any additional comments, questions, discussion? So then we will move on to the election parts of the vice president, and there is a resolution that would need a name completed before we move forward.
I nominate Maura Lang to the position of Vice President of the Ithaca City School District Board of Education.
I apologize, Eldred, on page 5 of your agenda, the language. So we're not nominating.
Yeah.
And we're past.
Yeah.
Oh,
For the,
I was wondering why you said a motion. Oh, got it. I have to read, be it resolved.
it's,
Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Ithaca City School District hereby appoints Maura Lang as Vice President of the Board of Education to serve a 1-year term as Vice President ending June 30th, 2024.
And that's what second, I second that.
That seems confusing.
what is confusing? Let's talk.
Yeah.
We haven't had an election yet.
Right.
I think that-
We could be,
Oh,
And then do we,
we can always.
okay, we
then we do back, and
I read nothing you.
then we go back and go, no, okay. Yeah.
Get it, because we have more than one nominee. So It was, a motion was made by Eldred, it was seconded by Karen. It's now open for discussion and debate. If the vote is a majority of the board, the process is over.
So do we vote on that resolution?
That's what's currently on the floor. Are we all in agreement? Now, you don't have to be in agreement, my spouse tells me I can't say, do you understand what I'm saying? Because it's condescending. It's kind of fine. I think literally this morning she sent me a thing that said you should ask, does anybody have any questions? Trying to follow her. Yeah, don't get me in trouble. Don't get-
I think what's confusing is what happens if the vote is not a majority.
Then we entertain additional motions.
Somebody reads the same exact thing for whoever is.
Right.
And so, well, not for whoever, it would only be Joe, would be only the person that would not. Want to make sure, I want to pause for a second. And couple board members know that I like silence as a moment of reflection, to make sure that we're on this. Yes, this is a new process that was recommended to us by legal counsel. So this is what we're. We used to vote by secret ballot, folks should know, which is illegal.
I remember that.
Well, I just heard it in that podcast and I was surprised.
Yeah.
We can talk about the process. And I think we should look at policy and policy guidance. I think.
Well, we did that last year. We did not vote secret ballot.
But we may be able to vote using sticky notes as long as we announce the role of who voted how, if that's possible. But again, we're out of our lane. Questions, discussion, debate of the motion that is on the floor, which is to appoint Moira as vice president. Hearing none, we will call the question. All in favor?
Yes.
All opposed? Abstentions. The resolution passes. Moira is been elected as vice president, and we can take the oath. Or Tricia, did you get all?
I did, yeah. I, Moira Lang, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Vice President of the Board of Education according to the best of my ability.
Thank you all very much. We will continue to work and address the things that Jill and others have expressed as we move forward. The next parts of the agenda are a number of, for lack of a better word, pro forma things. Some will discuss, probably require some debate discussion, others probably not, because we don't have other votes there. But again, feel free to ask questions. We are going to go through each one by one, though the oaths can be taken at any point in time within 30 days after the board votes. They don't have to be taken here during public session. So the first one is agenda item 5.1. It's appointment of the treasurer. There is a resolution that is there, and we'll entertain motions.
I move that Emily Scheit be and hereby is appointed treasurer of the Ithaca City School District, Ithaca, New York, for the 2023-24 fiscal year.
Second.
Moved by Moira, seconded by Jill. Questions, debate, discussion? All in favor? Passes unanimously. Agenda item 5.2, the appointment of a tax collector. The motion, yes, sorry, please.
I move that Chief Operations Officer Amanda Verba be and hereby is appointed tax collector of the Ithaca City School District in New York for the 2023-24 fiscal year.
Second.
Moved by Karen, seconded by Aaron. Questions, debate, discussion?
Just saying that it's not being Amanda knocks on doors and shakes people down to death.
I don't think that's how it works.
She is just the official point of contact once, everything is resolved.
Hearing no additional comments, all in favor? That is unanimous as well. Move to agenda item 5.3, appointment of the claims auditor. There's a resolution there. Entertain motions.
I move to approve that Courtney Pacala be and hereby is appointed claims auditor of the Ithaca City School District, Ithaca, New York, for the 2023-2024 fiscal year.
Second,
Moved by Morgan, seconded by Jill. Say again.
Discussion,
Yes, discussion debate.
is Courtney a staff member? That's the first time I'm seeing this name in this role. So,
Me too.
Dr. Brown.
Third party, posting. Man's not here today, but she's not a staff.
No.
She's not an ICSD.
She's not asking to be here. Yeah, it's both of you. Third party.
And you go, further, are you done? Further question, is this for legal claims? I always ask the same question every year, I always forget. What do we mean by claim?
You've seen Nora's name come up in years, previous years, the folks have been around. Star with one, so it's more for the same, you know.
Hearing no additional questions, we'll make note of that for future reorg meetings to make sure the language is more specific, especially for our colleagues that carry law degrees and want to ask questions.
Every year I ask,
Well, duly noted. All in favor? Is unanimous. We will move to agenda items 6, which are appointment of other positions. This is equally a long list, again, of a bunch of positions. At any point in time, ask questions about what they do, and what the purpose is. Agenda item 6.1 is the appointment of a purchasing agent, and there is a resolution there.
that's quite a question. Is there any mechanism to do 13 years at once? If there's no big idea.
I thought about that, Garrett, and I'm happy to entertain if that's the want and goal of the board. If you want to go through and look at all the agenda items within agenda item 6 to see if there are any questions. Because we are not going to be administering oaths for any of these, it is possible to move the entire agenda set. As long as it's a unanimous vote of all board members present
To,
to move the entire
yeah,
item 6, the agenda at a single time.
so
But folks should take a look to see what's there and ask questions.
my only concern if each of us did not go through this board packet yesterday, and in case anyone has any specific questions of what each of these roles, because we're overall responsible to know, not necessarily know every person connected.
But know what each role does.
Well, have an overview at all, and the beauty about this, there's some discussion, if anyone has anything, it's not just passing it and then.
Right, so maybe a little, the deputy claims auditor is much different than that support.
I've got a couple of questions, no concern, so let me know how you want to roll.
If it's a unanimous want of the board, we can open up for discussion for any of these items now. That makes sense to talk about those questions until folks feel comfortable. If folks aren't comfortable, then we can go through one by one. So you want to ask your questions now, or is the board okay with us asking some questions now about the entire agenda item 6 set? Jill, that's okay by you. So elders, feel free.
All right, my assumption is that the appointments are for the people who Dr. Brown appointed to lead such efforts. So 6.7, appointment of Stepsis, me, assuming that would be Heather, who's now in charge of our facilities, right?
Oh, current. Yeah, that would be a, yeah.
All right, Sean mentioned GAFTA. Previously, that appointment for the person who was coordinating all the Dignity for All Students Act information has been Amanda. That's going to be the same moving forward. And Amanda has a history of this, for those who don't know, she was actually responsible for that at BOCES before we talked her away. An appointment of COVID-19 response coordinator, that would be Mary Burke. Who is our,
Wellness.
what is Gary's title?
Moved it in there.
Coordinator of Health Services as well.
Okay. And that is all of the questions I had. Those are pretty essential functions.
And then, yeah, so that the building level DASA coordinators, in each case it's the principal.
And it also includes item 6.13, to make sure folks know. There's some debate of whether or not you're legally required or not, though most folks say yes, you're legally required to have community members serve on the audit committee. The audit committee meets 4 times a year with independent auditors. And the names listed are Ann Reichland, who's been serving in that capacity this year. Dr. Pat Waslu and Chris Malcolm have also been put forward as community members to serve on the audit.
How do you get put forward?
Nice.
How do you get put forward as people to possibly serve? on this?
Sometimes people write to us and ask if they can serve in this role. Other times we write to folks to see if you'd be willing to serve in this role. We have struggled at times to have community members that want to serve in this role. And for a long time, we had the same 2 members, Jay True, a former board member, and Don Waddle. Unfortunately, Don passed away last year, and so no longer serves in this capacity. But at any point in time, any board member could vote forward names for us to consider to be on the audit committee. And if we want to go through one by one to get to that, we can do that as well.
Remind me of the audit committee, it's a required committee, a mandated committee.
Yes,
And is the number of board members mandated?
it is not.
It's not,
I apologize, at least one board
at
member,
least one board.
and usually it's the board presidents, but anyone else who wants to take on additional committees will get there soon. And you are more than welcome to serve on the audit committee.
You said their quarterly meeting?
Yes, they meet quarterly.
And I have to say, despite the fact that we think we're on a tight ship, they always find leaks as they tell us about it. We patch them. They've gotten smaller over time, but those auditors are pretty thorough.
As an example of a leak, some of our clubs and committees don't hand in the receipts in the time we back. I mean, I want to be clear, it's not like we're finding $3 million that's
Money walking out the door.
$87 we can't account for. That's sort of what we usually find. Things like that. That's what I mean.
Good to have them looking over.
Or they don't have, or something that's common is that somebody associated with a club, a student, for instance, wants reimbursement, but they haven't put in for a purchase order in advance, and they cannot be reimbursed if they have not done the paperwork.
Let's mention something more important.
We'll keep it moving.
Yeah,
So we decided a couple of years ago to do something more valuable with our cash, right, instead of leaving it in the bank.
right.
We hired a third party who manages that for us, provides us a significant return. And that's not a small amount. But they haven't had anything but positive things to say about that operation. But they do look over our shoulder to make sure something like that is done.
Both an in-house and an independent auditor, multiple checks about our money. Send both, or we can ask Amanda to send both your way for all board members, just to have it in a folder. And maybe be on board docs. Maybe it is on board docs, like the audit.
The question about appointment 6.5, 6.6, and 7. For records access officer, records management officer, and asbestos. Last year, we had appointed Paul Alexander, who had passed away during this last school year. Is it because of more efficiency why we have 3 different names? And it's not, unless no one has been appointed to director of facilities.
We do have a director of, or coordinator of facility, the title
So it was one person and now we have three different.
Yeah, the efficiency and expertise, because some folks have a particular area, we all after 46 years, pretty much knew it all. So we have that specific stuff.
As an example, the records access officer usually deals with our FOIL requests, but let me rephrase that, usually addresses FOIL requests. The records management officer, not mistaken, it includes the historic records of the district that are housed or have historically been housed in the Danby School, I mean, they still are. And then we have the asbestos designee, which would make sense to have a coordinator of our facilities. That is also in contact with any of our contractors or subcontractors. And this is a question, Jill, that I think we just discussed at facilities about asbestos during some of the construction that's coming up, where we just had part of that conversation. Additional questions, comments? Are all board members okay with voting on agenda item 6 as a block? It only takes one of us to say no, and that's our right as a board. Everybody's okay? Eldred? Adam? Sure. All right, if that is the will of the board, we'll entertain motions to move the entire agenda item of 6, appointment of other positions. Yes.
Emily, just clarify, Courtney Bacala she can't be a district employee and she is not a BOCES employer.
Right, most people from both these, we hired Courtney, we have a claims auditor in place that is not associated with the district. Because there would be a conflict of interest if they were associated with the district, so. And in addition, when we pay Courtney, her claims are reviewed by Amy Augustine because she cannot approve. So we make sure that the internal controls are in place for the claims auditor as well,
And
which we're mandated to have.
this is our treasurer, Emily.
Yeah.
Our treasurer extraordinaire.
So, and I have to bring Sydney in as well,
Oh,
in case we're any.
So,
Yeah.
so who does Emily work for? I mean, who does Courtney work for?
Courtney is independent.
Independent.
We have hired her outside of the district to come in and do our claims auditing. She comes in once a week and review all of the accounts payable. And she does question a lot, so you will have reports, the audit committee gets reports from her quarterly. When we meet and reviews them. And again, it's usually just timing and things like that, nothing significant, because we try to think.
Entertaining motions.
I move that the entire slate of appointments under item 6 be
Second.
Moved by Moira, seconded by Aaron. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? You don't have to vote yes, Elder. If passed unanimously, we will then move to agenda item 7, which is bonding of personnel. There is only one agenda item under agenda 7, and that is 7.1. And we will entertain motions.
I move that the Board of Education approve the bonding of all persons and positions required by law or regulation to be bonded through a blanket undertaking from a duly authorized corporate surety covering such positions as officers, clerks, or employees.
Second.
Moved by Moira, seconded by Jill.
Aaron.
Moved by moved by Aaron,
Move by Moira.
I know. whatever that thing is. Discussion, questions? Is there someone here who can speak to what this is?
Who typically gets bonded?
So you want to take it?
This, in any, city, we would want. So typically you try to then accounts payable, the superintendent, actual cost measures as well.
It is part of our insurance policy that we have.
Additional question?
From New York. I get bonded, I think somebody. Fire. Hey,
Hearing no other additional comments or questions, all in favor? Passes unanimously. Agenda item number 8 is designations. This I think will require some conversation discussion, so we are going to go through each one as if everyone is okay with that, unfortunately, but there are a number of things here that we may want to discuss. So let's begin with the designation of regular meetings, discussion sessions of the Board of Education. There is a document in board docs which gives some idea of the suggested schedule for the year. This was done by Tricia and Emily and Lily. I think Dr. Brown saw a draft, I saw a draft as well. For the most part, it is keeping with what we've been doing over the past couple of years, which are board meetings, voting board meetings on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of the month. Unless it is during a break or it happens to be the day before a break, then we try to make sure that our staff also and teachers also have that time off. And then if we continue with the same committees we've been having committee meetings on the 1st Tuesday and the 3rd Tuesday as well. So if you look at board docs, you will see a agenda item with the attachment of a possible board calendar. This can also be changed. So this is not, is the document there? It's not there.
It's in the school district business, 14.1.
Gotcha. Okay. So. See there, if you want to get more information.
I just want to point out that it lists the specific committees that will meet on Tuesday. But that very well could have to change depending upon the makeup of the committees to make it doable forever for whoever is on the committee.
And my apologies for getting ahead. This is simply the board's decision to ensure that we meet twice monthly on Tuesdays. We'll get to the committees later on. So what we're only doing is what's legally required, which is to let the community and public know when we're going to hold voting board meetings. So we'll entertain motions for 8.1.
I move that the Board of Education will meet twice monthly on Tuesday, a discussion voting session or in-depth public discussion and voting meeting. That combined discussion voting meeting will be held when necessary with prior notice. And that the Board of Education meetings will be held at 6 p.m. in Lower York Hall, Ithaca High School, 400 Lake Street, unless a public announcement is made noting a change or a virtual meeting is required.
Second.
Moved by Moira, seconded by Aaron. Discussion, debate, yes, Karen.
Well, in January and April, calendars, it's usually 5 Tuesdays, and we said the 5th Tuesday we will have a board development. That's shifted. I see it did start on the 2nd. Is it because school we're out, the district is closed or something? January 2nd, for instance, is not the first board meeting or committee meeting. The committee meeting starts on the 9th.
Yes.
So then that shifts, we only have, according to the schedule, 2 board development sessions. Are we looking to include any other ones?
Without question.
When will we finalize that decision?
Without speaking for Tricia, Tricia will be sending out a survey where we can identify a number of dates in addition to what's listed there. including a second or first one in August. Beyond the 29th, that hopefully would have 2 in August. And then we'll be working with Dr. Brown's team and as well as board members to identify a time. Which we know will be difficult to match 9 schedules, but that's the goals that we're looking forward to having regular board development sessions.
Two in August or 1 in August, 1 September?
2 in August, but I'll follow up.
Okay.
Other questions, discussion? Hearing none, calling the question, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Agenda item 8.2, designation for the method for calling regular meetings and special voting meetings. There is a motion there as well. Entertain motions.
Okay, we move that the method of calling regular meetings and special voting meetings be in accordance with ICSD policy 2300, calling regular and special meetings.
Second.
Moved by Morris, second by Aaron.
We're on the roll.
Discussion here, debate, question, you speak.
You want to give me just a quick overview of how it's going to be done? Without me holding you to knowing exactly what's.
Understood. Tricia, you want to respond to that about how we announce meetings, or you want me to speak to it?
Oh, I can speak to it. Usually we post it on the website. So our communications team posts it on our website. And then also we send out an email, like a blast email to the district and board members about the dates and times. All the meetings are hybrid. And then we also have a board outside that we have the dates as well.
So the email blast would be independent of the meetings that are already listed on the regular e-insider newsletter.
In addition,
In addition, to that.
There has to be a notification period, like 24/7.
Right. Right, at least 24 hours.
open meetings law requires us to have an agenda posted at least 24 hours. There's an agenda item we'll talk about later today.
And
There,
again,
there is an agenda item listed later today, which I'll talk about when it's the consent. There are extenuating circumstances where agenda items can be added if there was a reasonable reason why something could not have been posted within 24 hours. As long as we make note of it, and that was the reason for Tricia's email yesterday and my email about the supplemental personnel report, that we did not have a reasonable time frame to get it within 24 hours in advance. But otherwise, the agenda has to be posted at least 24 hours in advance. We try to do a little bit more than that. Tricia usually posts it over the weekend and then for our Tuesday meeting. So that's the way in which we normally. The announcement of the meeting will be well in advance of that, but the actual agenda will be at least 24 hours in advance. Additional questions?
I guess I'm a little fuzzy on this. So is this that posting the agenda 24 hours in advance, this is an Ithaca City School District,
New York State, we actually, it's not even New York State, it's open meetings law.
open meetings, but where I have heard a number of times at NISBA meetings and such, that strangely, Board of Education are not required to have agendas.
That is news to me. I think you can hold a meeting without an agenda, but if there's something that the board is going to be voting on, it would need to be communicated to the public at least 24 hours in advance.
I mean, again, I've heard we're not required to have an agenda, though it's considered to be good practice.
I think our legal counsel would challenge that.
Okay, well, I heard
I know,
it from this, but yeah, right.
With it.
Probably even have it in one.
Additional questions, comments, we'll get clarification on that. I don't think we're gonna change our practice as part of the policy.
Right, I
Or
agree.
this agenda. We are gonna be revisiting that policy, just as an FYI, there's been a number of board members who asked for some efficiencies in our agenda, and we'll be looking at that as well. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor? Passes unanimously. Agenda item 8.3, designation as operative, all existing bylaws and regulations This is a policy, this is a motion to approve our current policy book that will be in effect for the 2023-2024 school year unless it is changed, which will happen throughout the year.
I move that the Board of Education shall continue the use of standing committees for the fiscal year 2023-2024.
Karen, my apologies, we're one agenda item up for that.
I'm ready to move along.
Designation of, I think we all are.
Existing bylaws and regulations of the city of the Ithaca City School District of the New York operative at the close of the school year 2023-2024 be and hereby approved for the ensuing year or until action by the Board of Education changes or deletes such bylaws and regulations.
Second.
Moved by Karen, second by Jill. Questions, discussion, debate? Hearing none, all in favor? Is approved unanimously. 6.4, now we're on standing committees. You want to keep going to try to roll?
I move that the Board of Education shall continue the use of standing committees for the fiscal year 2023-24 as follows, and the 6 committees as listed here.
Second.
Moved by Karen, second by Aaron. Discussion, questions, debate?
I will bring up the idea that we've toyed with bringing back the legislative advocacy committee. Is this something we discuss now or later?
This is the time to do it. If you want it to be a standing committee and not an advisory.
Okay, yeah, no, this would, I think we would basically bring it back to our committees and add it back to the agenda. There's been folks asking for it. There's been talk of collaboration with ITA. We've had meetings where, you know, with the board, Dr. Brown and ITA and all of the stuff already happening. I think it would be a very powerful committee to be able to keep that synergy going in collaboration. I mean, do you want to talk to that as well?
Yeah, for the first time in my tenure, we have some common legislative priorities and some momentum with advocating. And the current IPA leadership and myself, we both have leadership roles in our respective organizations. So there's a special opportunity for us to really get some things done. And also, Professor, your leadership in this fund, we have leadership in a major organization, we can do a lot. So I would be in favor of the committee, but I know I'm asking for folks to commit to yet another meeting, but I see a powerful opportunity.
You don't like those long drives to Albany multiple times, so.
It's in the past, we've been successful moving legislation from our tiny district to affected every child in the state. We'd like to continue that, but it does often require, if not traveling to Albany, having face-to-face conversations with our state assemblymen and our state senator. Now they're a little bit closer after this redistricting, so it might be a little more possible. Just to go down the street for experience, and Leah Webb often comes here, so. It's necessary, and I'll definitely would be in favor of it, but I need a phone.
I would humbly ask, so process wise, what would have to happen if we were to do this, you would have to make a motion that to be to amend this current motion, and be second, we have to vote on it, and then we have to vote on what's taking place. I would recommend, this is me stepping outside of the board president as a board member. I would recommend that it becomes an advisory committee, which does not require 3 board members to make it active. And we can then also include ITA legislative as being a co-sponsor or a co-advisor or any other community member. But it gives us a little bit more flexibility while still having it as be part of the board network. I think as a standing committee, just so we all know, we have 6 committees, 5 real committees, which require 3 board members to serve on each of those committees. That does not include the board president. So we need 5 committees amongst 8 people. We can do the math. Adding another one would make me, I would worry about our ability to stretch ourselves too thin. And I think it'd be a really good partnership if we were able to have union representation at the table along with us, as opposed to us just inviting them to attend our meeting. So now I'm stepping back into the president role.
Well, now also I would support that because additionally is if it's an advisory committee, it allows the flexibility for meetings to switch times, to be virtual,
all of that.
all of that. And I think that is extremely beneficial for participation.
You're right. We can do, those meetings can all be held by Zoom, if it's an advisory committee, or if it's a board committee, a quorum of the board in person.
Okay, again.
There'd be nothing to do at this point in time unless you want to push it forward.
No, so we bring it up in the next one. Thank you. Okay,
So,
that sounds
Okay.
perfect.
any other questions? Yeah,
We also talked about mental health, maybe becoming an advisory committee or.
that's where I think that it would go, and we can talk about the other ones that are probably there as well.
And I would just say, back. I know it's the winter, what, I attended a webinar at the beginning of June. By NISBA about board committees, and at the end of it, my head was spinning because well, they presented so much at a rapid fire pace. They had 67 slides in their PowerPoint for an hour and a half session, and they just went through it. And there was a lot of, there were quite a number of committees that they said are mandated, which certainly under those titles, we do not have. But, and then I shared the slides with Sean, who also found it quite surprising. And we ended up setting up a conference call with the folks from NISBA to ask questions and get some clarification. I just think at this stage, we would need to go back to our notes and look at some of the things that are that we heard were mandated, and find out if we indeed under some other name or in some fashion are fulfilling that mandate. So there needs to be continued work to figure out about what committees, whether we are doing what we're supposed to be doing with committees.
And by that, what can happen is we can share the PowerPoint slides. I can share a brief summary, but I think that's a conversation that we would not be able to solve in this moment, given the number of committees. I think there are 32 that were possible. About 9 were mandated, but we just do them in a different fashion. So we'll have to figure that part out. So that part I think we can come back to maybe at a board development session, maybe at a public session, we'll figure out what the idea is. But yes, it was an overwhelming number of committees that New York State expects. Just to give you a quick example, we're supposed to have a committee on AIDS education. We'll get there. So
Specifically that.
Wait,
Yes, sir.
AIDS, HIV, or?
yes.
Yeah, though the more I thought
That's my
about
fault,
it,
that's my fault.
yeah, that it may be that at one time we had that, and the charge of that committee is to have, I forget what it was, basically a educational plan in relation to the subject. So maybe we did it once, and maybe that fulfills the mandate.
We'll-
Sorry, can I say that, right, add one thing? Ours. I'll make it quick, Sean, let's not. Reason the committee structure we have now. Who did our agenda, right? This is an old agenda, I mean, not that it's a useless agenda. But it may be time for us to reconsider what our real priorities are. And therefore possibly shift how we organize committees. In curriculum, we've been pounding hard for years, but it's been really difficult to squeeze in mental health concerns, all the full range of social emotional issues, right? So I in the development session, I'd be down to talk about shaking things up. I'd be down to look at the whole thing.
For the time being, any additional questions or comments about the 6 committees that are listed here?
Just we have to have an audit.
Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of the committees as listed in the motion? That passes unanimously. This gets us to agenda item 8.5, which is the designation of standing advisory committees. There are two that we have historically found, and this is in, I'm gonna forget the policy number, but we have a policy that identifies how we create advisory committees or councils. Last year, so, wait a second.
2260.
Thank you. Karen is gonna be on the policy. We've had the Capital Project Advisory Committee as a way in which to add additional folks and additional eyes to talk about our capital projects that have been taking place. And we had an early childhood advisory council that probably was started, it was pre-COVID before that was started. And found to be very useful to try to bring a bunch of different folks together, community organizations, people who are providing services, etc.
But did that advisory council meet this past year?
It didn't meet this past year, but it did provide a report at the end of the previous year, and we can send out that report that they filed. So while these committees are listed here, these do not need to be the advisory councils that we need to have. Advisory councils should also have a mission statement of sort of explicitly what they're trying to accomplish. They do not make any decisions for the board. They make recommendations to the board that then get voted on in a public session. So that would be the purpose of the advisory council, but there is more flexibility in how they meet, who is invited to participate, who chairs the committee does not have to be a board member as well, which is a pretty significant change from board committees and things of that nature. Bless you. So questions, comments, Joe, please.
Given that I have not heard anything really from or about either capital project or early childhood this year, I'm wondering if we need to continue them. Certainly capital project could be subsumed under facilities in some way, and then we could, make that a regular report to people. I also have a proposal that we might want to consider a standing advisory council, at least for a year or two, or however many, for furthering our climate change goals or our carbon neutrality goals for the district. I know there's a lot of interest in that. I'm not necessarily volunteering, but I do share that interest. And I think that would be both timely and really appropriate to bring to recommendations to the board.
Additional question would be, we have the Inclusion Leadership Council, is that an advisory? I should know this because I'm on it, but I don't know where it falls in.
Welcome to that.
No, okay,
They play a similar role to set.
okay.
Already. There's another one. So we bring it closer.
Bring
in,
it
but-
closer, yeah.
Affiliated, closely affiliated.
Eldred, can you say that again? They play similar role as what?
Set.
SEPTA?
I mean, I wonder, what are the bindings of having an advisory council? Can you have the standing councils that aren't necessarily active, but are there to activate as needed? Because it feels like that's what early childhood and the capital projects are currently.
Both of those, and we don't have them listed here, we did in previous iterations of the agenda, would list exactly what their role is, right? So again, if we do look at agenda item or policy 2260, they are supposed to say what their purpose is and for how long they are going to be in operation for, and then the time that they're going to give a recommendation to the board. I would say to folks, we can have this conversation. We do not need to vote on this today. We could bring these back and write. So for example, to Jill's point, if we want an advisory committee on climate change, we could write that mission and vote on it at the very next meeting that we have in preparation for being up and running by the school year. The same thing. I have had a conversation with Harry Burke and with Lily about a special advisory council for mental health and well-being, which would include writing a policy on suicide prevention, which has already been underway for the past 3 or 4 months anyway, but that would be a way in which to engage. Bring other folks together. It could be an advisory council on, forgetting the other one that we were just talking about. Right? Legislative advocacy,
Right.
right, that we could again write the mission, say what their goals are, and then. We can put all 3 of those on the agenda when we had a little bit more time. I don't think it's gonna be an efficient use of our time. To try to write a mission with 9 people.
Right.
But if we can move that forward and we can table this agenda item until the next meeting while we have some time to work.
In that case, I move that we table this item.
Second.
All in favor?
Wait, one problem before we do that, can we, is someone noting, I think we need to consider and write down so we all remember. The ones to consider and discuss at a further meeting are legislative, mental health, climate, and I think we should consider, beefing inclusion leadership council to be part of these committees. And so table it, but make sure those are written for further discussion.
And we're deciding about the other. committee.
Yeah,
Or
right.
understand if we're like, it's like this.
Thank you for that. The reality is we don't need to do anything for those if we don't want them. Like they've been sunsetted, right? Their clock has run out. So if we don't put them forward, then there's nothing to do. They just don't exist. There is a finite date for each one.
Well,
That's a start.
responding to you real quick about the early childhood education. We're limited by human resources. And the fact that we didn't have a report doesn't mean it's not valuable. As this community grows, the number of children in our community without quality placements, either in daycare or preschool or Head Start, continues to grow. And our point initially in building that was, it almost doesn't matter where a kid starts, what skills they develop, what investments are made to them. They're coming to us. So we have a vested interest in getting them off to a good start, except for Waldorf and the other few smaller schools around. And last count, it was 6,000 kiddos in town who didn't have a spot. I imagine that number's.
I don't know about 6,000.
Yeah, that seems.
Oh, the Child Development Council actually presented a report saying 6,000. And they are our regional experts.
6,000 2, 3, and 4-year-olds or infant, no, I'm sorry, the
0 to 5.
Yeah.
0 to 5.
We're looking for a place.
So you'll bring this back up when we have this conversation.
Yeah, I don't know if we have I don't know if we have the bandwidth, I guess that's, this is triage and something. We can't do it all.
But I think each of these needs to have a charge, because this is what they're going to do.
I will follow up with I'll follow up with the entire board listing those. If folks want to take the lead on writing a charge and send the date, then we'll make that happen. We'll share it via email. We'll put it to the table. We'll put it on the agenda for the next time and we'll see where we're at. Fantastic. Agenda item 8.6, designation of TST BOCES Executive Committee. Who Eldred and Moira have served in this role before?
Yes. And Eldred has done it for the last 2 years now.
Ready to go.
And I was quite, even when I was on it, I didn't realize that this was an item that had to be voted on at the reorg meeting. And what it is, just for people's education, is a representative from each of the BOCES component district has a monthly meeting, which is chaired by Jeff Madison. No, it's not chaired by Jeff Madison. It's the group elects a chair, correct? Jeff Madison is there, his administrative assistant, takes the notes. And it's an opportunity, Jeff will give updates on things that are happening in our BOCES. The executive director of the Central New York School Boards Association attends and gives updates on what's happening with that organization. Sandy Rufo, who is our New York State School Board's representative for District 4, which we're in, he attends these meetings and gives an update on NISBA. And then each of the reps from the component districts share what's happening in their districts. And usually at each meeting, there is a presentation that is sponsored by one of the component districts about some initiative or some program in their districts. And there's lunch.
Should have started with that. And there's lunch, right? So we've had a number of board members, BOCES also has its own school board. This is not this is an executive committee, again, made up of one board member from all the component districts,
Or two.
or two board members.
Didn't you say that both Eldred and Moira?
Uh,
Oh, different time. I understood. Okay. I thought you were getting 2 lunches for it.
Eldred, alone, too much.
let's talk about how we want to proceed. There is a motion here that would need to include a name. And before we get there, I don't know if folks have an interest or not, or want to self-nominate.
Do we have to do the nomination and then elect?
No, we're just going. We'll get through the rest of this before 5 p.m. today.
Well, Albert, are you interested in serving in this?
Absolutely. Having our brilliant executives come and present to other members of those is extremely eye-opening to them. And it's great to hear. Well, from us, like in some areas, because perception is we're always out ahead, and it's not true.
I nominate Albert.
Do I second it?
Moved by Karen, second by Katie. We, to Aaron's point, last year, we will be much more, conscious of having regular BOCES updates, which I imagine this will be part of that as well. Any discussion, debate, conversation? All in favor? Congratulations, Eldred, another free lunch. 8.7, the board designee for impartial hearing appointments. This is a board member who participates in impartial hearings. Maura, you've done this before?
Well, traditionally, in my 8 years, that it's a new board member does it in their first year, and it require, I don't think I ever had to do anything.
You can,
Yeah.
you have to.
And who did it this past year?
Jill.
Jill.
And either we had no impartial hearings this year. Okay, I'd like to do it again.
That's a win, that's a good thing.
Okay, I move that Dr. Jill Tripp be the person responsible, designated as the member of the board responsible for appointing an impartial hearing officer in accordance with the rotational selection process established by the Commissioner of Education in section 200.2E of the regulations of the Commissioner of Education to conduct hearings in the district pursuant to section 44041 of the education law.
Second.
Moved by Moira, second by Adam, right? Is that, I didn't look up, is that your voice out? Questions, conversation, debate? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you very much. 8.8, designation of official depositories. These are the banks in which we store some of our money, or if not all of our money.
Is it possible to do all the rest of
I think,
8 in one fell swoop?
if we can just do a quick conversation. Well, let's do this one first. Because I have a question about the next one before we do.
So this is 8.8,
8.8.
okay. I move that the following banks and or trust companies be and hereby are designated as the official depository for the funds of the Ithaca City School District, District of New York during the fiscal year 2023-2024, and you
As
can
listed.
read the list as listed.
Second.
Moved by Morris, seconded by Jill.
I can say both things.
That's that will be. Questions, debates, conversation?
I have one question, then if we can't answer it, we can move on. So we talked about the external placement of those extra cash funds. I3, I think is the name of the group. The financial group, just wondering which of these institutions do they use, so then they split our cash amongst the numerous groups as well.
We'll take notes and you'll follow up.
I'll follow up.
All in favor? Passes unanimously. 8.9, the designation of official newspaper. I have Christian to do some quick research about this, because there's always questions. I don't know if we were able to find information out, Christian.
I reached out to Kate and I haven't gotten a response yet. But historically, we've used the Ithaca Journal. In addition to the journal, we've used Ithaca Times. And the Ithaca Voice, especially during election time.
And the reason why I asked the question is I was always told that the newspaper of record for a school board had to be a daily newspaper and a print newspaper. Which has obviously leaves us one option in this community. And even that has been, whether or not they're local anymore is another conversation altogether, right? But I wanted to make sure that that was the only option that we had. And so it seems like that is the case from everything I'm able to find as well, that it has to be a daily and it has to be a print.
Is that not an outdated law?
It is completely outdated. It's half of New York State ed law.
Yeah.
It's completely outdated.
But according to our policy, it just says, we welcome participation of all forms of mass media, print and electronic.
But not for the newspaper of record, which we're legally required to put certain notices in. So if we're having a public hearing, for example, it has to be put specifically in our newspaper of record. Right, we can still use other mediums, but it has to make sure it goes there, right? Or election postings, it has to go in a particular place. So I just want to give people that background, because I was wondering if we had an opportunity to do any changes. And for the moment, as outdated as it is, doesn't look like we have the opportunity to do so. But I'll keep pushing and asking that question. So with that background, we'll entertain motions and then we'll see if we can do the rest.
A motion that the Ithaca Journal be designated as the official newspaper for the city school district of Ithaca, New York during the school year 23-24 for the publication of all legal notices and such other data as is required to be published by law for which the same may be qualified to act.
Second,
Moved by Aaron, second by Jill. Questions, debate, conversation?
Quick question, are these updates like this that would be beneficial to the districts? Part of what the purview of like legislative advisory committee would be? You know,
Oh, could you advocate for the law without question? And I'm sure you get significant support from our local officials. Any additional questions, comments? All in favor? That is everyone in the room minus Elder. Elder is not present. So we have 8.10, the designation of signers. We have 8.11, designation of the internal auditor. 8.12, the receivers of money. 8.13, designation of independent auditor, which is, I want to make sure I see who that is. Yep. It's internal, right? Yep. 8.14, designated custodians of money. If the board is okay, we can do those all at the same time, but we can open up for any questions right now. Discussion, debate, things that people may want to know more about. Just give people another minute to look over. Is there unanimous approval that we could vote for all these at the same time?
Yes.
Entertain motions for agenda items 8.10 to 8.14. I think all I have to say is I move 8.10 to 8.14.
I move 8.10 to 8.14.
second,
Moved by Aaron, second by Jill. Any discussion, debate? All in favor? That is unanimous, everybody here. 9 is our authorizations. If we're gonna take a quick look and see if we can do it all at once as well. Again, most of this is pro forma.
I had a question about 9.8, the cell phone.
Yes,
I know in some contracts, administrators' contracts, it provides money. For cell phone usage, is that outside of this authorization of cell phones, or is this in addition?
I believe it's outside.
It does that.
So there are other administrators who may not have contracts, but still receive cell phones at district expense. That I'm looking at.
Something
Bob.
that
Yeah, there's some even
that teachers,
Okay, so like if you were a one-to-one with somebody,
If you're a family liaison for the pre-K program, for example, or if you are a school counselor.
how many do we have out there now? That's a rough,
I can answer, I can do a rough,
yeah,
probably have, so 2 other sections are some of our like grounds, custodial and technology staff who are like in and out of buildings. Handling tickets and so you include that plus administrators plus ITA and ESP staff and probably in this 70s or 80s. I could get a specific number, but
yeah, I'd be curious, because I'm just wondering. I mean, everyone has a cell phone now. I'm wondering if we need to continue to provide these, and it's an open question. We don't have to resolve it today. But you know, I mean, I carried one for the district at various points. And it was always, I had 2. I had my own and I had the district's. And I think it must be a significant amount of money, even with competitive bidding.
Yeah.
Real quickly, since 2005, when I was CIO, we've been trying to get out of the cell phone. And it's been unsuccessful. This is something I hope that we can bring forward. There are E-rate reimbursements, and that's a conversation at the federal level. In some ways, it benefits us to have cell phones, and so this is a big conversation, but we would love nothing more than to get out of the business of providing cell phones. Now, the reimbursements or the stipend, that's another conversation, but for us providing them, I would love for us to make that shift.
And is it part of a contractual thing for bargaining, do we know, or is this something we really could pursue to try to
It gets tricky. I mean, we want our administrators to be on call 24/7. And to say that, have that expectation, would then require some type of communication device. So we would have to look at multiple policies, again, look at federal, state laws, reimbursements, et cetera, to have a robust conversation here.
would this be a facilities discussion, or would this be where would we put
Policy,
Policy
facility.
and finance, but we can bring it up.
Oh, no, I'm more than happy to have it go through. Okay,
Again, and I pick the hood up every year, it's just 2005, and I've always shut it back down. Because
okay.
this could consume us so much.
No, I'll just add 2 things. One, I know a lot of other education institutions, not necessarily K-12 public, but moved away from cell phones and started giving stipends, right? Like rather than me give you the cell phones, I'll give you the money for a cell phone, which I don't know if there's a cost savings in that or not, we'd have to look at. And I know there are other administrators who do not want folks having their personal cell phone and only want to give a district number, right? So I think there's a thing there as well, where they want us work-life balance, right? A separation between, no, don't call me where the same phone my mama calls me at, right? You call this number as well, but I think it's always worth us taking a look and finding where that happens without creating too much unrest.
Stipend might still allow that.
Yeah, I mean, Zach, if we could get number on total cost and numbers of them out there sometime soon, that would be great.
When we had that discussion, I just point out, I know it's now possible to separate a telephone number from a device.
I don't live in your world, tell me more.
You can have multiple telephone numbers in the device. So you can have someone carry their personal device, they only have one phone with them, but one number is for themselves, the other number is for the district, and when the phone rings, they know which number is being called. So it allows some degree of separation of private life from their job, but.
After this meeting, how I can do that with my family.
I mean, I don't get into it now, I'm saying that we had a discussion
Let's go for that. Yeah. Good. Any other questions about any of the agenda items of 9 points, or the entire 9 series? Taking notes to come back and talk about cell phones as well.
Great.
Hearing none,
I'll move items 9 where are we?
9.1.
9.1 through 9.8.
Second,
Moved by Morris, seconded by Jill. Any additional conversation, discussion? All in favor? Passes unanimously. This moves us on to the consent agenda. For our newest board members, the consent agenda will always include 2 things in addition to anything else. It will always include a personnel report, which at any point in time is open for discussion, or before folks want to vote, can call to go into executive session to discuss items as well. Assuming that there is a majority of the board that want to also do so. And it will also include de-identified information of the services we're providing for students. So both of those items will always be on the consent agenda. Again, in addition to anything else. In the consent agenda, you will find that there are acting principal resolutions. The reason why not all schools are listed is that not all schools have associate or assistant principals. So any school that has an associate or an assistant principal, if someone happened to be out for more than, I think it's 2 days, right? Then we appoint the acting principal. For schools that do not have associates or assistant principals, they're covered by Dr. Brown and or his team, right? They're covered by central administration. That's the acting principals resolution, personnel. The supplemental that I mentioned, agenda item, we do not like adding supplementals within 24 hours. This is a special case to make sure that we can provide services for a student to participate in summer learning programs. If we don't vote on it now, we're talking about doing it in August, which doesn't make any sense. So we decided to add that. And that was the reason why you got the email from me yesterday, to make sure that folks saw that supplemental. It only has a single personnel item on it. Includes the minutes, and I believe that is it. So we'll entertain motions, and we can have any discussion items we want to have.
I move approval of the consent agenda as listed.
Second.
Moved by Jill, second by Moira. Questions, debate, conversation, Karen?
Oh, and both Enfield and Northeast do not have an associate principal at this time, but it doesn't make any difference with time. But it says yet to be determined. So is it close to?
Yes, we hope to have a name to you to the next one, whatever that will be. That's it.
Additional questions?
What were the 2 things you said are always on the consent agenda?
Is that
Personnel
three I
report.
apologize.
Okay.
Personnel reports, student services, and the minutes of the previous meeting.
I may have a question about that. I don't know if this is the right time to raise the question, but. Like, how does it get determined what goes on a consent agenda versus what gets voted on individually, like in the last meeting? We voted individually on the trip to Vietnam, but then everything else was lumped together.
In the consent agenda. It is typically, the way in which it had been done are the 3 items that I was discussing, and usually anything that is typically financial, of transfer of funds, the acceptance of funds. That is traditionally how it goes. Every now and then we'll add another item, but that is usually we usually put that as a separate voting item when and where we can.
And then if you're a member and you're looking at the agenda and you feel like I want to vote yes for 3 and no for 5, but it's all lumped together, is there a process to
There
separate
is.
it out?
At the beginning of each meeting is the modification of the agenda, so you can ask for a particular agenda item that's in the consent to be pulled out of the consent and put on the actual agenda. You'd have to make that motion, it'd have to be second, and it'd have to receive majority vote to make that happen
At that individual meeting?
at that individual.
Okay, and so that's just a majority vote.
Yes, yep. And there are ways in which to let us know in advance if there's something, before the agenda setting, like I really want this to be an agenda item. Then the board officers will talk with Dr. Brown and have that conversation. And that includes, so thank you for bringing that up, Adam. That includes additional items that you're not sure if it's ever gonna make an agenda item, right? Like, I would really like this to be an agenda item for discussion or for vote. Every board member has the opportunity to write in advance to the board officers. And our job is to make that happen as if and or when we can. I also want to be clear, like, just because it's asked.
Yeah, sure.
Doesn't mean it's gonna happen, but yes.
Okay.
So to Jill's earlier comments about transparency. I think I remember us pulling off discussions about particular positions that we had some robust conversation about in exec. And folks wanted something taken off consent. We obviously don't put the name on the regular agenda, but that will allow folks to vote on that item set.
And then how would it go on the public record without the names? Like,
It would be the names.
There were names.
the names would, yeah, I see.
So sometimes we've done a supplemental personnel report, not as part of the consent, but within the school district business. We voted on that without discussing names, but it was in.
Oh, I see. Thank you. Absolutely.
Additional questions, not did I make any sense?
Well, no, did I make sense?
Don't-
It's that I knew, you know, not, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
13 right now.
yeah, 13.
So is there usually a report, or if it's pertinent, is there a report attached?
Yeah. And if you look under board docs, so this is a good thing, just a reminder as well for new board members, it's always wise to sign into board docs. Because you may have access to documents that are not public. If you're looking at the public facing form of board docs, the agenda, you may not see all the things that you will see as a board member. So, but yes, the student services are listed under the agenda. There's always a document, looks more like an Excel sheet. The document, again, de-identified, that discusses what services for students are there.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions, big discussion. All in favor of the consent agenda as presented? It is unanimous. We have other school district, three quick items, hopefully we can go through. One is a proposal for the adoption of the 2023-2024 board meeting schedule. Again, this could always be changed, will be in line with some of the things that Karen has pointed out. New board members should know that the board does not have to announce a board development session, though we normally do. But it's not required if we're doing a board. The two times we do not have to announce that we're meeting is if we're meeting with legal counsel. There is no requirement to announce that meeting. There's no requirement to announce a board development session. All other meetings are listed on that document that's there. And again, they can be changed at any point in time throughout the year as long as we give advance notice. So entertaining motions for 14.1.
I move to adopt the 2023-2024 board meeting schedule as offered.
Second.
Moved by Morris, seconded by Aaron. Questions, conversation, corrections?
Question about the board development sessions, are they public or are they recorded?
No, neither.
Okay.
Closed door session, privileged information, it's the equivalent of an executive session. Cannot be shared. And we'll be following up with board development session information shortly. Putting more on Tricia's plate. Additional questions? All in favor? It's unanimous. And the next two resolutions, I want to thank Karen Yearwood for these, but 14.2, a resolution to expend funds for new board members to attend the NYSBA training. You are required to attend two NYSBA trainings, and we're just making sure that you have the funds available when you make that happen into your schedule. So we already did so for Adam, right? So we'll entertain motions.
We expend funds for new board members, Katie Acker and Derek Blaylock for NYSBA training. Mandated NYSBA training. I second.
Moved by Morris, seconded by Karen. Questions, discussion, debate.
Enjoy.
Thanks.
Don't get quiet.
All in favor? Unanimous. And the last agenda item is a leadership education event that's going to be hosted in Albany, and we have 3 board members who are interested in going. So we'll entertain motion. Well, let me ask, we have the opportunity now to amend this. Should any other board member want to spend 2 nights at the Desmond Hotel in Albany, New York, please feel free.
At the end of July.
So hearing none, we'll entertain motions.
I move to expend funds for board members Katie After, Elder, DeHellis, and Moira Lang to attend this leadership and education event on July 28th and 20th.
Second.
Moved by Karen, seconded by Jill. Any discussion or conversation? And enjoy.
Oh, I think this is how, like, best practices of previous board members to disseminate any. Great minds. You shared slides from something, but like, is that?
Yeah, I mean, usually when people attend conferences, they make a report at the board meeting or, share information, written information.
Via email.
Yeah.
Links and that sort of thing.
Right.
Or Jill at CTV or wherever.
Right. Come to my office hours, you can be here about it.
Hearing it, we'll call the question. All in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank everybody for your patience today and working through this. There's going to be, our next meeting is not until August. However, board members, please be advised, something may happen where we may have to call a special meeting or at least a quorum to approve any personnel items that may come up over the next month to make sure that people can actually begin their placements. So you may get a phone call from me or an email from Tricia saying, can we get at least a quorum here? We will make sure that everyone has an opportunity to weigh in before that happens. But even though we're not scheduled to meet again until August, it's probably likely that we'll have one by the end of July. Dr. Brown?
Can I share something about the consent agenda? Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for your approval of the consent agenda that included a Southfield principal. It's rare that superintendents have a good problem to solve. We had a great pool of candidates. And the process included multiple stakeholder interviews that included students. So we have Mr. Arthur Brown, you saw his name there. He had significant experiences. He's a former elementary principal in the Bronx. He's currently working in New York City in a central office role. He's been a teacher, he's been an instructional coach, just an outstanding person and an educator. And we're looking forward to him starting on August the 7th. August the 7th, he will be here to take over as the leader of South Elementary.
And that process includes parents and caregivers.
Parents and caregivers as well. Multiple rounds of interviews. Again, it was a good problem to have for myself and Ms. Talkett, that we had a really, really strong pool at this time of the school year.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
With that, good folks, 11:59, I want Jill to mark your call 11 o'clock. I know.